This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. Now, the Stuph File presents Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy. It's radio that's out of this world.
Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy, is a member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada and the author of National Geographic's Backyard Guide to the Night Sky, and also National Geographic's Stargazer's Atlas, the Ultimate Guide to the Night Sky. And Andrew, on March 18th, after 9 months in space, Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore finally returned from Gilligan's space station.
Yeah, exactly. What a saga that was, Peter? I mean, almost nearly 10 months in space, unexpectedly. It really does remind me of kind of like the Gilligan's Island because the scenario, because they were supposed to be there, right, for 8 days. And
right.
This was really just a reminder, I think, for everyone out there, is that this was a test mission, a shakedown mission of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. Now, Boeing has this huge contract, over $1 billion contract with NASA. Part of its commercial crew ventures that NASA set up is building out private contractors to create basically this Uber service for their astronauts in low Earth orbit, basically a taxi service to and from the space station. And so Boeing won this contract years ago, along with SpaceX. So SpaceX is Boeing's rival. So they were building their own spacecraft that would shuttle astronauts back and forth. And they've been going through a lot of cost overruns, huge schedule delays in development, and they've had a lot of hiccups with the Starliner thing. But this was kind of their final hurdle of having an actual human crew aboard for that 8-day test. And this was back in early June of last year. Everything went well. It was a picture-perfect launch. But then when they got into space, they started getting all these technical issues. So they had helium leaks, thruster malfunctions, all of this occurring as they were approaching the space station for docking. Luckily, they safely docked. But then engineers back on Earth at Boeing and NASA started to do some troubleshooting of the spacecraft. And it turns out that NASA was feeling very uncomfortable with the idea of the two astronauts returning back to Earth using Starliner. So they pushed their return flight back, meaning that they were staying aboard the space station, and they kept pushing it back throughout last summer. You and I talked a lot about this, I remember, of where this was going. And I don't think anyone really thought that it would be pushed back so far that here we are almost nearly 10 months later talking about it. But in the interim, they also basically dumped the Starliner, undocked it off the space station end of last summer. They made that final decision that they couldn't troubleshoot the spacecraft well enough remotely from Earth, that they needed to have it in the hangar on Earth to really understand what's going on. So they basically let it go, and it went down, it splashed down. It was fine. They had it, but that meant that the two astronauts had to wait for another ride. And guess what? It was a ride on Boeing's competitor, SpaceX Dragon crew capsule.
So let's flash forward to when they finally came home. I'm sure you watched this on March 18th.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a beautiful, you see how it went down. It's picture perfect how they, and I think what was interesting for me is that, it's 9 months of being on the station. It has a lot of physical effects on the human body. And so the recovery for them will be interesting to see how that will happen.
The one thing that I was watching when that came down is the marvel of technology that we have today, and it's just the simple idea of drone photography. Could you imagine if we had drone photography during the Apollo missions, either on the moon itself or during the splashdown, where you could see literally everything?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of immediately. That's what caught my eye watching the footage that SpaceX was providing. It was interesting to see that most of that was through the drones, and that had a lot of the initial, it was literally as soon as it splashed down, we had close-up views of the capsule, right? It was really, and seeing the boats from a distance coming towards the camera. It's amazing what we can do with these small drones now.
Absolutely. But beyond that, one of the things that kind of annoyed me since the splashdown are the naysayers, and by that I'm saying the conspiracy theorists. The Flat Earth Society, the people who believe that man never went to the moon. One of the things that was really intriguing was the pod of dolphins that was surrounding the capsule. I'm sure you saw that.
Beautiful.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And that's thanks again to a lot of that to the drone footage.
Yeah, people are online already saying, "Well, that's AI." It's like,
serious?
It's
Really?
like, what is wrong with these people?
Why can't they just enjoy what nature provides and what we can see? It is what it is. I think partly that, I think it's from folks maybe that have just been shuttered for too long. Everything with COVID and all this stuff, a lot of people are just not exposed to nature. I'm in the business of sharing nature in the sense of astronomy, the night sky. And, the disconnect that people have with the night sky is incredible. And that was very evident, actually, talking about drones, Peter. With all the stuff that was happening the last few months with the drones in New Jersey and, the northeastern U.S. Being invaded by drones. And a lot of stars were mistaken, like natural phenomena, planets were being mistaken for drones or UFOs or whatever they want to call them now. It just shows this disconnect. And I think with this disbelief of even seeing dolphins around, it's really,
well,
it just speaks to that.
That leads to our next topic, and that is, since you are so steeped in stargazing, talk about the Starlink satellite train, which people are getting a chance to enjoy in the night sky.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned, I think with a caveat to enjoy, depends on who you're talking to.
Yes.
Because if you're talking to professional astronomers who make a living of using these giant telescopes on mountaintops, they may be a little bit more annoyed by these trains, basically these series of satellites that are now kind of polluting scientific photography of objects in the universe. These are caused by SpaceX's internet-based satellites that they're launching dozens at a time for the last few years. And these are just creating what they're calling mega constellations of high-speed internet satellites. So the idea here is that SpaceX has created these set of satellites, very small satellites, but numerous, numbering eventually in the tens of thousands, that envelop our entire planet so that any location, any remote location would have access to high-speed internet without having the traditional cellular towers nearby. So really remote, like you could be, on Mount Everest and get high-speed internet if you wanted to, or in the deserts of Namibia, you would be anywhere to be able to get high-speed, which is great because it democratizes access to this technology. However, the downside is that it is polluting low Earth orbit. But with that said, everyday people can see the effects for themselves by looking up. If they know when and where to look, you can see very soon after these satellites are launched into space, within hours and the first few days, you can see a train of them, like a series, one after the, like a row of ducks, these pinpoints of very bright lights that traverse the sky. In a matter of a few minutes, you can see them move from one part of the sky to the other. It's actually quite dramatic. Some people, it's very eye-catching, so much so that it's actually caused a lot of mistaken identity in terms of like UFOs, like alien technology that people are seeing. Social media feeds are filled with these Starlink satellite videos. It's very, very, like I said, eye-catching to see this. You can actually find very easily if you just Google websites like something called like a Starlink locator, and you can actually put in your geographical location wherever you are around the world, and it generates when the next satellite visibility will cross your local sky. And it's something that it's bright enough to see even within urban city limits. So you don't have to be out in the dark countryside. It's very evident. It's brilliant enough to, even if you're in a large downtown city, you'd be able to see these string of lights going by.
Do you consider them, as someone who does this for a living, do you consider them something that is, bright twinkly lights like a string of Christmas tree lights, or do you consider it a nuisance as well?
I think for casual sky watchers, I think it's really neat. In terms of as an educator in that sense, it allows me as a great entry point into getting people interested in the night sky, excited. But as a avid amateur astronomer who loves to take photographs of the night sky through telescopes and things like that, it is a nuisance. I know SpaceX has try to mitigate the brilliance of these individual satellites by painting them at a darker color. They do lessen in their brightness as they reach their final orbits. It's usually just after launch, the first day or so, where they're very, very bright. Then they kind of disperse and they go higher up in orbit and they're not as bright. So I know they're trying to get them to be less of a nuisance. So I appreciate that, but it's still there, and it is still a serious concern, especially when we're talking about tens of thousands. I think there's upwards of 40,000 that SpaceX is planning on putting up. They have already 7,000 Starlink satellites. As of February 2025, they have over 7,000 functioning, and they want to go up to 40-some thousand. And that's just one service. You have to remember that Amazon is building their own satellite service, and also other countries like China want to be in this competitive business sphere, and they're envisioning tens of thousands of their own. So we're going to be swarmed by this. This is just the start of it.
Wow. One of the things you wanted to talk about was the Blue Ghost moon lander. There's a lot of independent companies that are trying to get to the moon, and this is just one of them. What are your feelings about the Blue Ghost moon lander?
I think this is just the start of a whole new era where we're going to see a lot of private companies, small and large, that are going to be entering this arena of doing lunar exploration. There's a lot riding on this, of course, because NASA has plans with its Artemis missions of returning humans back to the moon. And the fact is that there's a lot of things we're not quite sure about where we're going to be landing on the moon when humans do go there. And when we do select these specific sites on the moon, of characterizing what these lunar environments are like. And so there's a lot of space for private industry to come in, do it more cheaply and faster in terms of returns on their investment, especially with large contracts from NASA on the line. So NASA's kind of already thinking, and is doing currently, farming out these missions that test out technologies for them that will eventually be used in the Artemis missions, or at least help support the Artemis missions that are going to take humans back to the moon. And when we do, by the way, go back to the moon, it's not to just pick up some rocks and come back after a few days like we did with Apollo, half a century ago. We're going to be staying there for longer periods of time, 1 week, 2 weeks, then setting up a habitat area where a research station that will be constantly crewed, just like what we see in Antarctica. That's kind of like the template for what we want to do on the moon. And so to get there, these private companies are just trying to scout out locations, see what kind of natural resources there are, how dangerous the environment is, just characterize everything. And that's what this little Blue Ghost lander that survived for 2 weeks was highly successful. I think it was just a fantastic mission. Firefly Aerospace, a small U.S. company that had this contract with NASA and had NASA experiments on board, science experiments to help characterize the environment, which is amazing because it went down so well. And, after 2 weeks, once the lunar night came and darkness came onto the landing site, it shut down as predicted. But before it did that, it sent back, and by the way, I don't know if you saw this, Peter, but it sent back an amazing picture of the Earth above the horizon of the moon. And you could see the silhouette of the lander in front on the surface of the moon. It's very inspiring.
Yeah, and there was also great pictures of a sunrise, wasn't there?
Yeah. It was actually more than a sunrise. It was a solar eclipse from the moon. So we actually had a total lunar eclipse happen here on Earth. It was on March 14th. So everyone in the Western Hemisphere, places like North America and South America, looking up on the night of March 14th, saw the moon enter into the shadow of the Earth and then turn into this beautiful orange-red coloration. Some people call it the blood moon. That's what it's popularly known as. But what was interesting, at that very same time on March 14th, while we had the lunar eclipse, this little robot lander on the moon looked back at our planet at the height of that eclipse. And from their perspective, they saw Earth, like the robot, basically took pictures of the sun moving behind our planet. And you saw what looked like a bright, fiery ring of light surrounding the limb of all around the edge of our planet. And that was our atmosphere lit up by the sunlight traveling through it. And it was orange-red in color because that is how the light from the sun is bent or refracted by the particles in the air of our atmosphere. It was incredible to see a solar eclipse happen because our planet got in the way of the sun from a perspective from another world.
And it's interesting because you mentioned the color of the light. We see the sun, or we shouldn't be seeing the sun because you shouldn't look directly at it, but we see the sun as an orange ball or a yellow ball, but that's because it's our atmosphere. When in reality, for instance, the picture on the moon of just the sun, it's like a white light because there's no moon atmosphere.
That's right. So there's no atmosphere on the moon. So you see the actual intrinsic light, type of light that the sun has. And what was very interesting is that this whole effect of the blood moon, right? So why we see the moon turn red during a total lunar eclipse when we look up in the sky during the eclipse,
right?
That's because the sunlight is, of course, hitting our planet, right? And on its way to the moon. But before it gets to the moon, goes through the atmosphere or the ring around the edge of our planet. We have that little thin column of air, and the particles, be they like dust particles or ash or smoke or whatever it is in the atmosphere that's floating around, then it bends the light towards the sunlight from that whitish yellow color to a orange-red coloration. It's the same physics that happens as why we see sunsets as orange-red, because it's going through that thick column of air and it refracts the light or bends the sunlight towards the red part of the spectrum. So that then travels through our atmosphere and gets cast onto the disk of the moon that we see in front of us. And so when Firefly, the little robot lander, looked at our planet during the maximum eclipse time, it saw that reddish coloration surrounding the edge of our planet, that which then travels and hits the moon itself. So if you and I, Peter, were on, and this is a great kind of like thought experiment, if we were on the moon, think about what the coloration of the land around us, the lunar landscape, would be at the height of this eclipse. It would be orange-red. Everything would be bathed in an eerie orange-red coloration.
I got to get two quick things in. So this is the speed round. The James Webb Telescope data is now available online. Have you looked at this?
I've looked at a little bit at it. There's so much there because what basically this is sort of a compilation of specifically the planets that it's finding, the exoplanets. If people go onto the Webb Space Telescope website, they can go and look and search through this archive of all these exoplanets, planets around other stars that the James Webb is finding. And, it's already racked up something like over 130 planets or so or more, and it's always increasing in the number. And it's amazing to see all these alien worlds being cataloged. It's the most successful telescope in being able to do that. And of course, we're waiting for the moment where it finds an Earth-like world, something that's the size of our planet, maybe with an atmosphere that's similar to ours. That's kind of like the holy grail. But it's amazing to be able to see all these extrasolar planets being cataloged live on this website.
Well, what's been described on Star Trek as an M-class planet, basically 1 hour of ours, can the James Webb merely with pictures see the kind of atmosphere that a planet has, or just speculate?
We can actually see it, but what it does is it looks, because we just don't have enough of resolution power, even with the James Webb Telescope. It's not strong enough to actually see the planet and details. But we can detect the atmosphere, the light from the planet, and dissect that light, look at the basically chemical fingerprints, and can determine if it does have an atmosphere, one, and what kind of chemicals are in that atmosphere, the chemistry of it. Does it have oxygen, carbon dioxide? Are there pollutants in there? Is there chlorophyll? These are compounds that are indicative of perhaps life. And this is something that James Webb can help identify.
And finally, the ISS has a new live streaming service of the Earth that's 24/7. Have you taken a look at this?
It's incredible, that you were talking about I just wish I wish I had a 4K television to really look at this on my big screen. Because this is sort of like I'm in heaven, being able to see the Earth, just moving under it. Remember, it's going at 17,000 kilometers per hour, and to have 4K cameras streaming this ultra high definition views of our planet from 400 kilometers above, it's incredible. And this was set up just about a year ago, March 2024. Was the SpaceX Dragon capsule actually delivered these cameras, and it's attached to the European Space Agency's Columbus module, and it basically includes 3 cameras, and it provides 3 different unique views of the space around the space station itself and the Earth below, including this amazing wide-angle lens that captures the curvature of the Earth's horizon. It's absolutely amazing.
Well, as I said earlier, this is something else for the Flat Earth Society to complain about.
Exactly. The curvature is right there. You can't deny it.
You can't deny it. On another note, it's one of those situations where, we've had the technology around for a couple of years. It almost seems kind of late for them to say, we've got an aha moment. In 2024, we'll put these cameras on.
Sooner or later, they're going to have to accept the facts. That's the way I see it, because technology is just going to keep getting better, and more people are going to be going into space too. So even perhaps flat earthers. Yeah,
they're going to say it's AI. Anyway.
Who knows?
Let them continue to watch the cave drawings. On that note, sir, we are out of time for this segment. How can people find you?
Folks can reach me on my website, thenightskyguy.com. But of course, even better than that, just go to all my social feeds, like on Facebook and X. I'm on YouTube under, of course, The Night Sky Guy, where I give regular updates on what is happening in your night sky, wherever you are in the world. Easy, casual night watching. That's what it's all about.
Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure. Clear skies.
Andrew Fazekas, The Night Sky Guy. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0814, and you'll find links to Andrew's site to get your very own personalized autographed copy of his books.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.